Okay. Oh, so I'm introducing this one. Son of a bitch.
This one has beer.
Business Under the Influence. Also, David, do you listen to my podcast?
No, not yet.
Rude. Anyway.
Well, I don't know what your podcast is called.
Have you even looked at my website that your face is on?
Not yet. Yes, I did briefly, but I have not.
It's Building Better Businesses with Catalyst Consulting. Ready?
Building. Sorry.
That's my pajama kid face. You guys know the pajama kid gif meme?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's actually very good. Like, now that you tell me,
I know.
It's very good.
Wait, hold on. Oh my god, that should be my Halloween costume. I'll just get a SpongeBob
and
pajama
then you
top,
just gotta
and
hit
then
the hair, so it's doing his hair thing.
Yeah. Oh, a piece of cake. Okay. Hold on. Nope. Don't laugh. I'm getting it. I can feel the giggles. Okay.
That's perfect. It's Business Under the Influence.
It is. Yeah.
Allegedly.
Okay. Ready? Allegedly. Welcome back to episode 4 of Business Under the Influence. Thanks for coming back. We really appreciate it. I mean, also, I think we're having a great time anyway. So if you don't, fuck off. So Business Under the Influence. This episode, we're talking about the performance management cycle and our various opinions and experiences with such. What's next? Introductions?
Mm-hmm.
So the gentleman on my left is Ben.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on my left.
Yes.
Anyway, so Ben here is a very he's got a lot of initials after his name because he's done a lot of schooling. He has an MBA. I don't know why I can't remember what the title of your actual MBA is. Like, what's your the name?
Innovation
What?
management.
Innovation management. I mean, it sounds really cool. It sounds like you build robots or something.
It sounds businessy.
It does, yeah. Business buzzwords.
Synergy.
Synergy, past simple. Okay, anyway, so MBA, freshly minted PMP, which is a motherfucking PMP, if you know what I mean. And in case you didn't know, Ben can actually yodel "Baby Got Back."
Yeah. Oh yeah,
It's true.
brings tears to the eyes.
End of the episode.
End of the episode.
Listen till the end.
Yep.
All right. I am introducing my good friend David here on my left. And it's funny because we're in the same room. He has years of management experience from the U.S. military to U.S. corporate life, retail, you name it. He's probably done it. He is also a psychologist, allegedly. Air quotes. He's really good at telling you why you're wrong. But a fun fact about David, the beard's not real.
It's a filter. All right, and then I guess to my left is Kristen. She has quite a bit of time in the trenches, learning things the hardest way possible so that you don't have to. And so that is her superpower. And the fun fact about Kristen is she is actually afraid of geese, not because they're assholes, but because someone tried to smother her with her pillow once, and the smell just brings it all back.
But factually, geese are assholes. I would also like to point out that is a true fact. No debate. That's good. That's good. We're very we have such interesting paths, you know.
Oh, what are we drinking
Way to spell
today?
trauma.
Oh yeah, past trauma. I'm drinking the Hogue Screw Top 2018 Cab Sauv.
We have a lovely pale ale with some nice notes of hazelnut,
IPA hops. Oh,
and hops,
And
full of
mountains,
hops.
it looks like. A little bit of
Fun
the
fact
sun.
that would actually make me very ill because I'm allergic to hops.
That's unfortunate.
Oh yeah, great.
You
yeah.
live in the Pacific Northwest.
Well,
Yeah, that's how I found out.
Well, when
Yeah,
you
that's how I
have
found
bad
out.
genes, that's how that goes. You should have good genes.
Yeah.
like
I
me.
get my genes from Levi's.
Oh, Ben. Oh, Ben.
Mute.
Yeah. Yes. Your speaking privileges are revoked. Yeah. So performance management cycle. I may have already had some wine. Spilled very little of it. Where do we want to start with this topic?
I think the kind of what the purpose of the performance management, the performance management cycle. Why do you even have to have a performance management cycle?
That's incredible.
In the first place.
Please use that voice more.
Why?
Wow.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I guess that's where we're. I mean, yeah, I would ask Ben, but he doesn't know, so we're asking.
I don't have a damn clue.
Ben, what is your definition of a performance management cycle?
Well, it could be a couple things. My initial thought is with a given employee, performance management cycle is both the feedback loop for performance improvement, be it positive or negative. There is a conscious performance improvement when someone is not doing well, and you need to address the issue, discuss with them. But then there is also the ongoing and continuous feedback that should be happening with employees, whether they are doing well or not. Am I right? Did I multiple choice that?
Yeah, you fucking killed it.
We're so proud of you.
Drink.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Cheers. Yeah. So David, in your experience in an unmentioned military establishment versus like corporate life, were there similarities or differences or both?
Yeah. So I think the big thing for me on performance management in a military world, you are usually running it on. So there are quite a few similarities. You are running things usually on a quarterly cycle. In the corporate world, we always try and say we're running on a quarterly cycle, but that usually is the first thing to go when crunch time hits. Is like one-on-ones, performance feedback.
Yep.
And so everyone has we're at the end of the fiscal year, and everyone goes, "Fuck, we forgot about performance reviews," and then everyone has to write everyone's annual performance review.
It's funny how that just became annual.
Yeah,
towards the end of the sentence.
Right.
Yeah,
well, they are annual performance reviews, but you're supposed to do like quarterly updates on the majority of the time.
Yeah.
And so in the military, that is actually a lot more heavily enforced. Usually, it gets hit hard when you're at the lower levels, because at a low enough rank, if you do well enough in your performance reviews, you can actually make rank faster than it should be possible, because you're a badass. And so there is a lot of focus on lower ranked enlisted members, especially, of being like, oh, and then also even lower level officers as well, commissioned officers, because you can make rank faster if you prove that you're good at what you do. And how you prove you're good at what you do is you're really good at writing a single line that goes across the length of the page and does not extend past the length of the page, but leaves as little white space as possible that explains what you did, with approved acronyms. And we literally had a book of acronyms. But you do that is much more heavily enforced, and then you kind of get in the habit. And then you, as a supervisor, once you get the rank, you are now supervising people. So you are now doing their quarterly reviews. And so therefore, you're usually knocking yours out as well. So there's a lot more focus on that side of things. And so you often do have official feedback guaranteed every 3 months on a very formal level with whoever is managing you at that point in time. In the corporate world, that's the goal. That usually doesn't happen. I think the other thing that is kind of similar on that is that oftentimes the person who's judging how well you did your job does not actually do your job. And so there is that similarity there, where you have to be able to explain to someone else why you being good at your job is good at your job. So if hypothetically in the military I was a bunny wrangler, in the military is very important to the safety and defense of our country, that we wrangle the bunnies so the bunnies stay in the cuteness zone and they don't wander out to the murder zone. We need to keep the bunnies in the cuteness zone. But when I explain to a general who's looking at dollars and cents, he's going to say, why the hell do we have a bunny wrangler? And I have to explain, you don't understand what bad press it would be for this military institution if bunnies made it into the murder zone, and then there were just pictures of murdered bunnies, and they say this military institution did this.
Can we make that the episode title? Bunnies in the Murder Zone?
And so
absolutely.
And so you have to be able to explain to someone who does not know what your job is, because the military is hyper specialized. you have to be explained to someone who has never seen your job, doesn't have an impact to their life if you do or do not do your job. And you have to be able to explain to them why your job is valuable. And so I feel like that relates directly into the corporate world as well, where oftentimes a director is deciding your budget. And that director is 5 people removed from you making that argument. You have to be able to find a way to make that argument. So those are kind of similar on those sides of things. And so like if someone says I'm bad at my job, I have to be able to communicate to them that I'm good at my job or what. And they may push things down that say like, make this person better at anything else other than bunny wrangling. And that could then become a performance improvement for me on that side of things. As far as how they're very different, the one nice thing that is, I say nice thing because that's my management style that I default to in high stress situations, is at the end of the day, if someone is not doing a good job, you just tell them to do better. And if they don't, then they're gone. Those are your 2 options in the military. It is like
that's a great manager.
You will shape up, you will ship out, you will accomplish this mission because people's lives do rely on you wrangling the fuck out of these bunnies. So those bunnies better be in the cuteness zone, because if there is one bunny in the murder zone, we can actually take you to court over your inability to do your job. So for example, my fun fact about the military is if you're late to work, they can take you to court and they can take you down in rank. They can withhold your pay. They can do all that if you're just like, don't show up to work on time. And so having that as a fallback as a manager is you can just be like, either you do this or it's going to be very uncomfortable for you. And I will provide no help. I will provide no guidance. I will do nothing for you unless you have a good leader, in which case they do, which I had a lot of phenomenal leaders while I was in the military. But you have that ability of just like, either you solve this or you just don't get paid this month. And that's how that's going to go today. And then you're like, well, cool, then I quit. And you're like, fun story, you can't. Whereas in the corporate world, you actually have to keep someone at the job, because you can be like, either you do this or it's going to go bad for you and we won't pay you for a month. And they're like, cool, then I'm gone. And you're like, wait, no, don't leave. That's not how this works. And so on the corporate side, you have to do a lot more management. Yeah, you have to do a lot more management of the individual to say like, hey, how can I make you motivated? How can I make sure you do succeed?
So what I'm hearing is, at the end of a performance review cycle, when it comes down to it, you should have a pizza party.
Always.
Keep people motivated.
Yes, and also
Ben,
probably
I
bunnies.
swear to God, yeah. If there's not a ball pit, I'm out.
Yep, I am out.
If
a bouncy house
at any point in time was like, hey, every other Friday we just have an inflatable adult size obstacle course. Sold. Done. Yeah. I will work for so little money you don't even understand. Like, we need to reevaluate what motivates people in this country.
Because it's evidently obstacle
Ben
courses.
would be like single-handedly running an entire like logistics warehouse, and they're just like, all right, Ben, okay, it's obstacle course time. And he's like, yes,
it's Friday. It's second Friday. Yep. I will be CEO for a bouncy house. You don't even know.
Yeah. Fully support this mission. My new goal in life, doing everything I possibly can to make this happen. Yeah.
Oh, so anyway, review cycle.
Anyway, yeah. Back to
so I think at the end of the day, the nice thing about the military, and I say that with, like there are large benefits of having that as an option, is that you don't have to. Your performance management is only making sure people are in compliance. You don't have to motivate and drive them because they're in the military. Clearly, they're self-motivated, self-driven. Because everyone knows that if you take 1%,
they signed a contract. Yeah.
That if you take 1% of the population and then change nothing and then put them into the military, they are the totally different human beings from how they started. And but so the big thing there, the nice thing about that environment is you don't have to motivate, you don't have to prep, encourage, drive. Like, you can literally just be like, here are your 2 options. And in the corporate world, you can't do that, because guess what? You do have a competitor in the corporate world. So they can just be like, cool, well, fun fact, what if I just left for this or left for that or burn this place to the ground? You can't stop me, Chad.
Kevin.
God. I wasn't going to try and rag on single names, but I know at some point a name is just going to stick in my head. I apologize to all Calebs. I might just choose the name now. but that'll be my
I like
employee punching bag.
Yep.
Caleb, I
Mhm.
apologize. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
But say I'm a manager in the civilian world working with Caleb. What is my goal with the performance review cycle? Why am I doing it with Caleb? That's a question for both.
Yeah. I feel like, and this kind of like goes back to our previous conversation too, talking about like leadership versus management. Like in theory, you're doing it so that you can help this person become a better person, achieve the goals that they want to achieve, and then maybe even some that they didn't know that they had. Because that, I think, is one of the most fun surprises about leadership is like, oh, we've kind of like unlocked this hidden potential that this person didn't even know that they were interested in. But that's like, unicorn. But yeah, so to sustain from the transactional side of things is to sustain a certain level of performance that you need to sustain in order to continue to run your business. And that includes performance management and coaching human beings in almost every case. So yeah, that's kind of my ultimately to get a result. Secondarily, close second, hopefully, is to help your team become better and achieve the goals that they want to achieve. Or if they also want to, because there are other people who just like what they do and they just like coming into work every day, knowing what their job is, feeling like they're good at it, and then going the fuck home and like not stressing about anything. So whatever that looks like for them. That's
must be fucking nice.
But like the whole
God,
idea
tell me about it, yeah.
I'd say is like if your job is just slapping a table and you just show up and you slap a table, how do you know if you're good at slapping a table? Like you get a paycheck every day, but you feel like you're slapping the table harder or faster than the person next to you.
That's an HR case.
How do you know that you're good? Like you can't, as a person, how do you say like, oh, I am a good table slapper? Or man, I am over exerting myself slapping this table, and I go home with a sore hand every day, and I'm unable to then play Super Smash Brothers on the N64.
How old are you?
And so at the end of the day, performance management isn't just necessarily a way for the manager to ensure that people are reaching expectations. It's also to set those expectations for that person. Because if I can say, Ben, I need you to slap a table 60 times per minute, you can then go, okay, so one slap per second. Or if I need to go like drink some water, I just need to do a bunch of quick slaps real quick. Or if I say you need to hit the table this hard this many times per minute, and you say, got it, understood. And so that's the idea of performance management is it is a two-way street in the sense that it gives me a way to say like you are or are not meeting expectations, and it removes the ambiguity of them being like, am I actually good at my job?
I think
like I don't know.
That's another good point, though, is that there's a lot of auxiliary benefits. So we have this thing, as I understand, as you guys are explaining to me, we have the performance review cycle. It is a process by which a manager works or a leader works with an employee to better both the employee and the company. But it's not just that. Can it also be a way to evaluate the bandwidth of that employee or other business needs? I feel like the main way that performance review cycles happen is by one-on-one meetings. Everyone's heard one-on-one. Everyone's had the one semicolon or colon one on their Outlook calendar.
That's how I do it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the mechanism. When we say performance review cycle, like that is kind of what we're talking about. Is that not also a time to evaluate the bandwidth of that employee? Do you have like 30 tables that need slapped and that person is already burnt out and you're like, Jesus Christ, how do I slap all these tables? And hire someone else is the answer. When would you learn that outside of the performance review cycle? Or what are the other bullet points that you get out of the whole performance review cycle as a concept?
As far as that, also, who picked slapping tables? Was that David?
David.
That was me.
Fucking idiot. No, I'm kidding.
He has driven this bus into Table Town.
out of control. Yeah.
Welcome to Table Town.
Oh my God.
Sir, that's a train.
I like to quickly submit to the group for approval that anytime we use a corporate buzzword, we have to drink.
Agreed.
Like bandwidth.
Okay, wait. I feel like we need to circle back around to that. Let's put a pin in that for now, and let's circle back around.
Okay. What was the original question?
What else do you get from the performance review cycle?
So there should also be metrics though. Like you're not necessarily determining if you're talking about corporate life, or if you're a manager of people and you are not the owner of the business, then you're not determining what the metrics are that the business is being measured by. But those are pieces of the performance management cycle. It's not just like how good of a person are you? It's also, are you meeting the minimum level of production requirements for fucking table slapping? Or are you below the minimum? Did we recently acquire a plethora of tables that we now need to have slapped, and so we need more employees to slap the fucking tables? Or are my people just so slow and stupid that we can't slap the tables good? Like, what if we used both hands? You know what I mean? Like, then you could slap 2 tables at one time.
There's one dude just headbanging, doing his best.
Yeah. He's like, anyway, I can't believe this is the thing that we're doing today. So there are additional metrics for like that level of performance that you're also discussing, because you're talking about what's the word? Productivity, efficiency, however it's measured in whatever corporate buzzworld you live in. But there's also going to be some form of that if you are the small business owner and you're like, my host takes 47 minutes to seat every fucking client at my restaurant because they talk to them nonstop instead of like, so there's going to be different kinds of measurables for whatever it is you're doing. So that's the piece of it that kind of goes hand in hand, I think.
Okay. We talked about this a little in the last episode, but providing constant and continuous feedback. David's really experienced in this. You always want to provide feedback early on so that it is a normal thing and an open discussion with your employee. But how does the form of that change depending on the size of business? For example, a restaurant is not going to go get a $10,000 subscription to Workday HR software to have this like managed review cycle like that's not the right format, obviously. So for what types of businesses, what formats do you use or would you recommend using?
I mean, I think, David, you might actually know actual numbers on this, but the average person can only effectively manage like 10 to 15 people at the most, really. And like some studies recently would say it's like 5 for the most part, depending on what the type of work is that you're doing. So I feel like that's kind of a direct correlation. Like depending on the size of your team, like if you are a small business owner, you own a restaurant and you have 30 employees and none of them are in leadership, you are burnt the fuck out and you probably hate your life. So that's like, you need to bring in some like leadership people. And from there, that's, I think, when you're talking about platforms, I would think.
Exactly.
David?
And
it's about, the math checks out.
Thumbs up.
I
I guess I'm also wondering, how does the format change? Like you can scale and there are softwares that help you scale and otherwise, but if I'm running a small restaurant or even a food truck, what does a performance review cycle look like with my employees?
Well, I think the big thing here is that metrics are tracked differently between any metric thing. Every productivity is
what?
It's easy. A metric thing is tracked differently via each metric thing. So at the end of the day, like when you're talking about the performance management cycle. The performance management cycle will tie in the business's metrics and goals. However, performance management is done on a person-to-person basis. And so it doesn't necessarily matter how you're tracking the success of the business, as long as you can communicate that success of the business to the employee themselves. So it doesn't matter if you are as long as it could be like we use an advanced AI. This AI analyzes every breath a human being takes and how much work they exerted in calories per breath taken. But then I do my performance management with like a freaking chalkboard. Like that, all that matters is that when you're doing the performance management cycle, you don't, whatever system it is, you just need to convey that the all-powerful AI god told me that you are performing at this level per breath taken. And I will draw, like, this is how many tables you slapped today. And the AI god told me that you could have slapped all those tables harder. You did slap every table, but you slapped them really fast so that you could go and do whatever else with your day. So it all, like, you can do it with a chalkboard. The whole idea is that the idea of the performance management cycle isn't necessarily how it's tied to the metrics. It's how you convey the expectations and the goals and the tools and everything to the employee themselves. And so that scales at any level, because at the end of the day, all you have to do is be like, did we do what we wanted to do? Yes, no, we killed it, we did not. And then.
So the big answer there is that every company needs a performance review cycle.
Yes.
Potentially, even if it's just you. If you are a single member corporation or otherwise, I don't know, schedule an hour to take some notes on how you're doing.
Yeah. Or did we make money this month? Did anything I do adversely
those metrics are
affect
too
that?
real. Those hurt the heart and soul.
Yeah, those are not table slapping.
That's why we include table slapping, because it separates the emotion from the action, and then you're able to have an honest conversation.
I mean, I have emotions about the table slapping though. Like,
I'm really passionate about table slapping.
Yeah. So like as a business owner myself, and I've been solo for the most part, like I've had contractors a few different times that have helped with different pieces of the business. And now I have my henchwoman, Melinda. I still have like monthly P&L reviews with my bookkeeper specifically. And then just in general, I'm like looking at my metrics and measurables, like the targets that I'm trying to hit that are getting me towards my long-term goals. Because otherwise, how do you know? Like, you don't know, like, I think a lot of business owners in particular forget to celebrate the successes and celebrate the wins. And it's very easy to do when you're like trying to get to this, like whatever your goal. I want to be a 7-figure e-commerce business, or I want to do 6 figures in coaching every year, whatever your thing is that you're trying to hit, $20,000 in my Etsy shop, like whatever your goal is, if you're not checking it along the way, then the wins don't feel like wins anymore, because you always feel like you're just trying to get to this insane goal that's, $20,000 and whatever. And then you're like, well, I've only done 12,000, but it's like, dude, you fucking sold $12,000 in an Etsy shop. Like, good for you. Like, that's amazing. So I think that's a key piece of it too, is like being able to acknowledge the stuff along the way, even if you are a solo entrepreneur before you have a larger team. And then it almost becomes more important when you have a team, I think.
Yeah. Because the whole idea is, as a solo business owner, in theory, you're self-motivated and self-driven. But
theoretically.
But when you have a team of people, those people don't have skin in the game. And so you have to give them the reason of where they're at, how things are going, and what they're seeing out of it.
I mean, they might have like restricted stock options or other.
They might.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But I think, like, to your point too, is like you're saying that the container doesn't matter as long as the content is happening, because I feel like that's the difference between like effective leadership and performative leadership, where a corporation is saying you need to have X amount, or like to your point, the military, like you need to have these conversations at this scheduled time or else. I think takes away the value. Like, there should be some, like, I honestly feel like monthly one-on-ones are too far apart. Like, I've had bi-weekly one-on-ones, and that's pretty, that's bare minimum. Like, the smaller the team, the more frequent the one-on-ones are. I usually have weekly one-on-ones with the teams I'm involved in now, but yeah, like the scheduled time to specifically talk about your performance, your successes, your goals, your opportunities, that's separate from just like a random one-off conversation on the sales floor or in your food truck or whatever the thing is, where it's like, this is time that I'm dedicating to you as your leader to make sure that you have what you need to get where you want to go, and that you know what is expected of you in the long term or short term.
Definitely. So David, I know you've held one-on-ones a lot. With me, I used to work for you in the past. Fun fact.
Oh, God, slapping tables, baby, slapping tables.
I slapped so many tables.
So fucking hard.
He was also allergic to tables. That's our fun.
I was very allergic to tables. Tables means work. So, Kristen, have you held one-on-ones in your corporate life or in a larger organization?
Yes, all the time.
All the time. So, in some of those larger formats, what structure does it take? So you're a new manager. You have 6 employees starting out. You're about to host your first one-on-one. Obviously, you've been on the receiving end in the past, but how do you make your first agenda? Or how do you start that conversation? And how do you take effective notes during that conversation?
I think it kind of depends too on like where you're at. So if in your scenario, if it's you're taking a new team, that's a little bit different process than an established team, like you've been a part of it for a while. But I don't know why I needed to explain established, like you guys didn't know what that means, but just in case.
Hold on. Big word.
Wait, established means already existed. Yes. Excellent. That's also how you make essays longer, by the way, is describing the word that you're using. Yeah. Webster describes established as.
Yes. Little tip for you guys. Yeah, so it's always been for me like, hey, how's it going? Like, how do you feel like things are going on the team? If you know that something's happening, like if you know David's been having a rough few weeks and you're like, something's not right, then you're like, hey, how's it going? Like, it seems like you've been a little stressed out, like you got extra stuff going on, like what's happening? Otherwise it's just pretty much that. Like how's life, how's work, how's the team going? We've been working on this objective. How do you feel like that's going? And then you kind of move into like metrics management, I guess. And to David's point from earlier, when we're talking about like early and often, that's kind of when you start having those accountability conversations like, hey, yeah, so like normally we would expect X, Y, or Z. It seems like you're having a hard time hitting those goals. Seems like you're having a hard time coming to work on time, whatever the thing is. What's going on there? And you start having those conversations and like, cool, well, what do you think needs to change? And you kind of self help them guide. Yeah.
The
self-guide help.
Yeah, self-guide help. So the big thing for me is what a lot of managers do is, as a good manager, you want to come in with like the proof in the pudding. Like you want to be able to say, here's our numbers, here's this, here's your attendance record, here's this. You want to have that information available, but you don't want to drive the conversation by those numbers. And so one thing that I did as a young manager was I fucking like Sherlock Holmes everything about someone's life. And then like they would sit down and I would be like, okay, so here where we're at. Last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, between this hour and this hour, you were at here. And then you did this and you did this and you were observed doing this. And this is the case. And they're like you come in like that and they're like, fuck, do I need a fucking lawyer right now? Because it sounds like I'm like, this is not going well for me already. And I'm like, and anyway, thanks for doing everything you're doing. You're doing great. And like people would leave just like, what the fuck just happened to me? Like he came in and was just like pinning a murder on me and then was like, you're doing great. I really appreciate it. Like, and so like I had to be like, one time I had my boss sit in because I was getting a lot of negative feedback on my one-on-ones with my employees. And my boss sat in and he was like, Jesus Christ, like, what are you doing? Like, what's your goal out of this? And I was like, well, I just want them to know I'm engaged with what they're doing day to day. And he's like, oh, Jesus Christ, no, like, stop that. And so
it's exactly that, though. It's what's your objective for the one-on-one? If you hold them just because a dumb podcast told you to have them, that's not going to go well for you. But what do you want out of this hour or the half hour with the employee?
So that's the big thing is like I had to go in and I did a lot of work beforehand to understand, are they meeting business goals? Are we pushing in the same direction? Have I seen any issues? Are they dropping off from their usual performance, or are they just, have they not met performance? And I will do all of that homework. But whenever I do a one-on-one, I like to see where the person is at, where they feel they're at. Because if they're like, I'm doing awesome, then like clearly I have not done a good job of telling them what the expectations of the job are. And I should not then be like, you fucking suck, you're the worst. And it's like, because clearly they're like, okay, so you feel like you're doing well. Why do you feel like you've been successful so far? Things like that. So I usually like to let them say, hey, how are you doing? How's life been? How do you feel things are going at work? What have your struggles been lately? What are you feeling really proud of? What have you been really successful at doing since we last talked? And they can, or like, what goals have you been trying to reach and things like that. And then if someone is completely off base on what their expectations are of what they thought they were doing versus the reality of the situation, I now have, boom, here's the data. Let's talk about it. But most of the time, if you're investing that time into the person, you're like, well, from what I've seen, we aren't doing what we need to be doing. Like you are not actually accomplishing, like we cannot give the customer anything that you have touched, we cannot actually give to the customer because everything you've touched comes out damaged. And so like
all your tables are fucked, Ben.
Yes.
All of your tables.
All the tables
they're all
are fucked
up.
Like you just slap the top of a pizza and now there's just grease stains on every table.
Why are your tables lumpy?
And so those are those like where you have that conversation and you save that data to be able to say, this is the actual situation, this is the reality situation. But if you actually invest in the employee and you're talking to them about, how do you feel things are going? How is this happening? What are your struggles? Usually some of them will, like, I've gotten some really rough ones. Like, yeah, I'm going through a divorce right now and I think I'm losing my kids. And you're like,
Yep.
cool, I'm glad I didn't come at you with like, all right, I noticed that normally you're 120% effectiveness, but you've been at 70% effectiveness, and that's not okay. And you need to figure that out. But because I'm like, hey, how's your life been lately? And then they just drop that bomb, and you're just like,
completely changes the tone.
all right,
That
I
level.
understand all of these numbers now, and this all makes so much more sense, but I didn't lead off with the data. I have the data, but I care
Right.
about the person and
Sure.
their ability to succeed, because if they succeed, I succeed. Because as a boss, I don't actually, like, I'm not there to sweat. I'm there to make sure that the sweat is efficient, effective, and towards the goals of the business. And so, like, that should be my primary concern. Are they doing something that actually helps move the business forward? So that's how I do it.
I have a thought. Yeah. No, I think that's important, because it's like, if you're involved and if they feel like they can tell you things and crazy shit is happening, especially for somebody where like that's completely out of character for them, like they show up every day, they do their job, maybe it's a top performer and they're doing more than their job, and they drop to regular, and you're like, you good? Like, what's happening? Then you can be like, okay, cool. Like, what do you need from me? How can we help you get back to where you normally are? Do you need some additional time off? Do you need half days, if that's a thing that you can arrange at the place of, you're employed? That's the kind of stuff that I think matters more to people and will help them push through and will often get better results, because you're like, hey, I get that you're going through a super shitty time, which is hopefully temporary, because again, we're still a business and we're still trying to make a profit.
Out here slapping tables.
Down here slapping
Yeah,
tables.
just
Table slapping LLC.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it does matter, and especially when you're like trying to manage people on someone else's agenda, which is the corporate life. You have to be like, hey, as we have to hit these goals as an organization. So, or is it a conversation that you can have with your team? Because some teams are tight knit enough where you can be like, hey, Ben's having a really shitty time right now. Like, is there anybody that can pick up some extra hours? Like, can somebody take an extra day so that he can have some extra time off? Like, whatever the situation is. I think that stuff helps the team function better in a lot of cases, because they're going to notice too. And I think that's when you run into some issues, or it can be kind of challenging when, if Ben is having a hard time and he's going through a divorce, he's going to maybe lose his kids, he's living on his cousin's couch for the time being, and no one knows what's happening, then that's when you start getting a little dissension in the ranks of like, well, Ben's not doing anything right now. Like, he's coming into work, he looks fucking hungover all the time. Like, he's crying at his desk. That's super weird. But being able to like,
Did you work with me?
yeah, he's a sensitive boy. But sometimes that helps, or if you can like tell specific people, like the ones that are going to be the shit stirrers a little bit, where it's like, hey dude, like, just give him a little bit of grace. Like, he's going through some shit right now, so just give him a little bit of space, give him some patience. Like, we all have shit happen to us. He'll be fine, but it's going to be rough for a minute. And I think a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, okay, because they get it, because we're all humans. But then there's the whole, what about me? And that's the shit that like starts to cause drama, I think. Well, I'm being held accountable to doing this. Yeah.
So I guess the thing that we kind of would want to talk about as Ben is learning about the performance management cycle. So how would you run the performance management cycle for like someone who is very applied, wants something, and you think they're destined for something more, like they want something more out of the company? How do you run your performance management cycle for someone who is just an average performer who does their job? And how do you run it for someone who is just an absolute shit show and is not meeting expectations? Or just even is just not a shit show, but just isn't meeting expectations?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. As far as like the cadence goes, that's always the same for me. Is like, so in last corporate life, I did biweekly one-on-ones with everyone, and I like rotated because our teams were way too big. So I had 20 to 26 employees, give or take. And so I would do like half and half, and then like every other week. Not that detail matters, but you're welcome. And then, so during those conversations would be like, that part never changed. It was always that same cadence. And then in the conversation, it would depend on what they were trying to accomplish. And I think with like high performers, it can be tricky sometimes to figure out if they do actually want something else, or if they just like being really fucking good at their jobs. And sometimes it takes a little bit of convincing. and trying to figure out like if they have other skill sets. Because the problem that I'm sure you probably have run into before as well is it, particularly in a corporate environment, you either have to move into leadership or you bump into the ceiling of needing a degree or additional experience to be an individual contributor that gets paid more than like the delivery or operations team. So what I've noticed has happened is like on a delivery team, to try and move up in individual contributor roles, you're either moving into client management, sales management, or proposal management. And your other options are leadership. So if you don't want leadership, it can almost be more challenging to like have additional options and move up or into different departments. So yeah, just kind of like that, I think is probably the most challenging thing with top performers sometimes. And if they're fine, like some people, you know, like some people just like to be there 180%. They're just more efficient and effective naturally. Their brains work the way you need them to work for this particular situation and they like it. And then they go home and that's fine. But
I've definitely had high performers that are just like, do you want to learn other tasks? And they're like, no. In fact, I just don't really want to talk to anybody. And I was just like, well, and they're like, so like, frankly, like if we could just end this now, that would be ideal. And it's like, all right, cool. Let's just end this now. And they're like, cool, I'm just going to go back and then just be 2.5 people worth of output and just leave me alone. And I'm great. Best employee I've ever had.
Yeah.
That kind of pizza party.
He didn't want it. There was time he wasn't on the
own.
floor. Like he didn't want that. He went and
Yeah.
he had his turkey sandwich, and then he came back to work and he just solved problems. That's what he did.
Yeah. And I think those people, if you can give them better like financial incentives and stuff like that, like when you can give out raises, we're talking corporate life, I guess, for the most part, but if you can give them a little bit more of a bump, and like that's usually enough to be like, hey dude, like I see the extra work that you put in, I appreciate it, here you go, here's your extra 27 cents an hour for the year. And if you are a small business owner, those are the people that you want to fucking keep around because they are low maintenance. They like doing a really, really, really good job, and they're going to show up for you all the time over and over again. So like fucking give them whatever they want. Like
it is
end
worth
of story.
it to use a business to give them whatever they want, because the pain of them leaving, it's not a situation in which you've created a single point of failure. That's a different thing. Having one person that can do a job, if they leave, everything collapses. Different thing, could be a whole episode. But this is just someone who is so good at their job that replacing them is going to be a massive headache. Yeah, you'll survive, but you will lose money. It'll take you a while to train someone up, etc. Like, honestly, get them better healthcare. Get them an awesome sit-stand desk.
Yep.
Don't nickel and dime your employees overall, but this employee is a perfect example of that. Like, it is worth it to you as an owner to take care of your people that are pushing the business forward. And
most of the asks are never big.
No.
Yeah.
Most of the asks aren't, I want a company car. Most of the asks are like, it gets kind of toasty in my corner of the room. Is there any way I could have just like an air circulator and then a fan? And you're like, what's that? Like, that's $120 at Home Depot, and I keep my highest performer. But the amount of people that are like, well, if I get you an air circulator, I have to get everybody. No, they're in the corner that's hot. Other people are not in the corner that's hot.
And then you're like, okay, if you get everyone one, that's what, $1,200 for a small company? That is still peanuts to hopefully what you're making. We can talk about finances of a company later, but if you are concerned about buying fans for people, you are concerned about the wrong things.
Yeah.
Anyway, performance review.
Or like, can I just get my name spelled correctly on my name badge for my cubicle? Sure.
Like that is one of my actually like great victories as a manager, is someone's email was spelled wrong. Their email, and they had, every time they logged into any system, and the crazy thing was, I was doing their payroll is spelled correctly, but to log into the payroll system, they had to spell their own name wrong to log into the system to see their name spelled correctly when they input their hours.
If you want to make someone feel like they're not a person and they don't matter, just fucking spell their name wrong all the time on purpose.
Yeah.
Ooh, we should do an episode on negative management techniques you should never do. Like, that's the Halloween episode.
Yeah. Or how do you
ever do this?
How do you get someone out of your business as fast as possible?
Call it never ever, but
just smell their hair occasionally, see what happens.
Oh, no.
And then just let them know it smells different when they're awake.
Oh my God.
Too far.
I hate that so much.
This is so I guess what are some strategies you use? So you own a small business. Ben, you also own a small business.
Mm-hmm.
What are strategies you use if someone wants something more? They're a high performer, they want something more. What kind of conversations do you have with them to like gauge, is that something more here or elsewhere? And either way, how can I set you up for success? And like, if you want to go elsewhere, how are we making sure that that doesn't just shoot us, doesn't throat punch this company on your way out? How do you have those like conversations on a small, because I've worked only in large companies, corporate, military. Like I work in a large environment where I have a lot of resources to say, oh, hey, you seem really analytical. What if I started cross-training you in our planning or our transportation and logistics department? Because I feel like you're wasted driving a forklift right now. And they're like, cool, I also feel like I'm wasted driving a forklift around, but I care about doing a good job. Therefore, I drive a forklift really well. And I have those, I can just be like, well, let's move you over to the planning department then. How do you do that in the place where you have 6 to 18 employees?
So I'll go first. I think Kristen will have more experience here, so listen to her. Basically, I have no responsibility for poor decisions.
Stop devaluing yourself, but go on.
But so I run a small business. I have 19 employees at this point. I don't want to sound hesitant, but we just opened a new location, and so we haven't fully onboarded everyone. Regardless, how do we have performance reviews in a small company, and how do we evaluate whether it is worth it fundamentally to give an employee what they're asking for? And I do this a lot. We could have a whole episode on financial breakdowns, which is something that I absolutely love, especially for a small business. That's its own thing. We won't get into that too deeply, but there is revenue generation for a small business. There are costs of overhead, utilities, facilities, whatever it might be. And there's a balance at the end of the day. There's money coming in, there's money going out. If an employee asks for something, to be honest, 99% of the time, as you said, it's small. Like, I want a fan on my desk. I want my laptop super slow. Can I get one of the new ones that was just issued to the other employees? And that's fine. If they want something a little more lasting, like recently, employees asked for phone plan reimbursements because it's a business that involves having appointments over the phone and things like that. There are legal considerations, but the financial consideration is, okay, do I pay each employee an extra $80 a month? Probably. That's not that much for a business of my size, but there's still a breakdown of, okay, how many cents go into one phone session that they're having, or what percentage goes into this, what percentage goes into that. I can offer you $50 a month reimbursement. You know, I'm giving an example. I still am in favor of just give them what they need if they're a really high performer. But that's kind of how I gauge it for a small business, because money is a lot tighter. You aren't a massive corporation with a ton of resources. You have to do these breakdowns if you want to understand how you're growing and, you know, ultimately where your money is flowing.
Yeah. I think also one of the pros of a small business is that you do still have flexibility. You can fucking do whatever you want. Like,
it's also so much easier.
The number one pro of being a small business, you can fucking do whatever you want. Like, sometimes it's a terrible idea, but you can do whatever you want, right? Like, so I think it just kind of depends. As far as like when you're talking about like performance development, like if somebody is like, I don't love the role that I'm in, I would like to do other things, then you absolutely have the ability to be like, oh, interesting. I wonder if we can evolve what you do into something else, especially if you're like kind of consistently growing, or maybe there's room for someone else on the team, is like, hey, is this something that you would be interested in? Do you want to be developed into more of a business manager role? Do you want to be developed into our sales role? And we can bring someone else in that you could theoretically then help train to be whatever it is that you are. You get a little bit more flexibility, I think, in that aspect too. Be more creative in the solutions that you're able to offer. Because like, to your point, David, like it's a lot easier when you have like the departments that exist to be like, hey, do you want to just maybe go to like the engineering department? Because you like logic and shit. But when you're running your own business, math. It's like, fuck, boo, fucking math. Math is stupid. Sorry, Ben. So
that was my entire answer to the question.
It literally was. Yeah.
Oh God.
Ben's like, so let's do some
bottom line.
Yeah, let's do some calculations. And I'm like, fucking do what you want, man. I'm cool aunt vibes. You're like responsible. Yeah.
She is wine drunk, so she is cool aunt vibes now.
Oh, absolutely. That's my jam, dude. You wanna fucking go to Mexico? Absolutely. I'll bring the cocaine. I'm just kidding. I don't do cocaine.
I can't even
FBI,
spell
don't listen.
cocaine.
I don't think that's true. Did you say you can't smell it or spell it?
Spell
Oh.
with a P.
Okay. Anywho, okay. So yeah, as a small business is developing, you have the opportunity to like flex your employees a little bit. So if they're like, I'm feeling kind of burnout, or I'm not really feeling engaged, or like I'm being challenged at work, I'm not being fulfilled in whatever way, then that's when you kind of have the ability to look at different things, or even just like shifting their responsibilities a little bit. So that's where you're supposed to look at the math. Then
I think one of the interesting things, to just jump over Ben talking about math, one of the interesting things that I found is that I have two types of employees being disengaged. And the one everyone thinks of and plans the pizza parties for is the person that just doesn't want to be there. But then you also do run the risk of someone who is a rock star and they are not challenged and they want to feel like they are getting something from work that's not punching a clock. Because it turns out people don't just enjoy showing up to a place for a while and then leaving and then maybe getting something that kind of makes sense in their head. So they actually need to actually feel fulfilled at work, mind blowing, or feel valued, or get something out of the interaction beyond money. So people are really bad about conceptualizing how money actually works in the world. And it's why we have so many financial planners and all that stuff. And we sell just awful things, weight loss pills online and things like that. People are bad at money. And so the big thing is like people need to get something from work. And so the hardest battles I've ever had to fight is to try and keep someone who is a rock star. And I have to fight to try and get them something they're slightly interested in. And the battles I fight are like, well, like I need to get this person. They're amazing. Why would we ever move them? And you're like, no, you don't understand. They're amazing until they're gone in 2 weeks because they don't get what they want out of this company, because this is not a pure, you showed up, you punched in, we hand you money, you leave. Like you need to get something out of your job.
Honestly, I think it's easier when someone asks for a thing, even if it's an expensive thing. Hey, can I go to this $5,000 4-day conference in Seattle? To be honest, yeah, probably give it to them. When someone needs to feel fulfilled or asks for a broader subject, like I would like to be a manager, that's a lot harder to just provide. And if you're a small company, that's a really interesting position, but it can also be really exciting. You have someone that clearly wants to grow with the company, maybe is passionate about what they do. I don't know, if you slap tables, good luck. But then you get into, okay, you have an opportunity as a business owner to develop an employee with this performance review cycle, especially when you're in that, like, your business hits 10 employees and you're like, shit, I'm starting to need a manager under me. I'm the owner, but we have 2 locations, we have 2 branches, we have things going on. You can start looking at which employees are interested in doing that. And that's also how you build your team, because someday you might be a 600 person company and you need to be familiar with how a lot of those original 10 people have now moved up into management roles. And if you aren't taking a big stand role, whatever it might be, in their life or their development, that's just not going to happen, right?
I think that's like the concept that is important there is like the development of a talent bench is the people who are going to fill the next roles before the next roles are actually available. And that's still important as a small business owner. Because to your point is like, if it's just me and I have 10 employees, like that's fine. Depending on what I'm doing, like as a business owner still, like, because at some point I'm probably going to want to either step back, have different focuses, or be able to just develop somebody into that role. Because that's honestly one of my favorite things about leadership in general is like trusting someone and empowering someone to believe in themselves enough to think that they can do the next big thing. Like, especially when it's something that they never thought they wanted to do or could do, or they're like, oh, I could never be a manager. Like, I don't have whatever the thing is. So yeah, developing people, giving people stretch assignments, letting them do projects, process improvement projects, like those kinds of things where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
I feel like we're really having some struggles with this piece of the delivery process. Like, what do you think we should do? Can you maybe do some research? Can you help me figure out how to solve this problem? Because especially with someone that's been with you for a while, they fucking know the shit probably inside and out at least as good as you do in a small business situation. So that's a good way to be like, hey, like, here's some extra stuff, especially if they're already handling the stuff that you've like is part of their normal job responsibilities. But that's also, I think, a good way to test and see what they really want to do. Because sometimes people don't know. They're like, I feel kind of bored and disengaged, but I don't really know why. I love you. I love working for the company, but I feel like there's something more. And then just like testing different things to be like, hey, what did you like about that project? What didn't you like? What kinds of skills do you feel like you would want to develop after that specific project and then move on to the next thing? So
yeah, I think one of my favorite strategies for like developing, because again, like a good leader always trains their replacement. Like if you're scared of someone being better at your job than you before you're able to move out of your job, then you're a bad leader. Because if you train your replacement, then they're going to be really awesome and that's going to look good on you. And so you're going to move on up. So you always want to train that. And the ones that I really like are especially like performance improvements, or that's the big one I like using, is like, how can we, in my performance management, I like to be like, this process sucks. I do not have time to fix this process, but I understand you are frustrated with it. And I understand that it is a problem. I cannot manage this process. And being able to take someone and say like, because it's something they already have ownership of because they hate the process too. And so then you can just give it to them. And that's, I think, a great way, like you were saying, like, here's a project, here's this. And then you can hot wash it after the project and be like, yeah, how did that go? And they're like, I couldn't get anyone to do anything. And you're like, oh, why do you think that is? And you can develop and grow them that way. But I think the process improvements are one of my favorite ways of just being like, all right, you don't know what you want to do, but this isn't enough. Here's some more on your plate. And then the other thing that's really important, I think, in that process is sometimes if they get handed a cool project by their boss that they like, respect, or whatever, is sometimes you have to corral them back in. Like, you still have to do your job. Like this, one. Yeah, like this is not now your job. You still do your job. This is extra stuff. And I think that's been one of my biggest struggles, weirdly enough, with high performers, is just being like, no, like, this is extra. Like, this is you figuring out what you want to do next. You still have to do your Monday through Friday. Like, that still has to happen. And that's usually been my, like, in my performance management conversations, is like, stop it. Like, I've had to pull stuff out of people's hands because they're just like, oh, my job is now fixing this process. And you're like, also your job though. And they're like, this process. And you're like, no, but also your job. And you just have to be like, it's like taking a tennis ball out of a dog's mouth. Like, no, like, I'll throw it. I'll throw it when you have it out of your mouth and you're just being a dog for a little while. And then
I do want to talk about some of that negative feedback though. With performance cycles, we've talked a lot about how to grow employees or giving the positive side. What about an performance improvement plan, or someone that's just not doing well? How do you develop that?
Well, you come off with a 5-star frog splash off the top rope when they're already down.
Drink.
That's a wrestling term, not a business term.
That's a corporate term now. You think I'm not using that?
So we're gonna go full 5-star frog splash on this client. People are like, what is that? I think the big thing that's always the easiest part about doing the negative performance improvement is actually, like we keep saying, early and often, because when I had someone who had hypothetically issues putting on a lab coat to work in a lab, hypothetically, I was able to say, like, are you sure this is the right place for you? Yeah,
buttons or zipper?
The first day was sleeves, and then the next day was buttons. So hypothetically. So, like, I think at the end of the day, like, having those early conversations of, are you sure this is the right place for you? Like, you seem like you have a great attitude. You're here to learn. But like, you seem to be struggling with some of the basic tasks of the job. Is this the spot for you? And then when they do struggle further down the road, you're like, hey, like, remember how we talked about how you were having a hard time? you're still having a hard time, bud. Like, and like, what do you need to do better?
When does that turn into a formal improvements plan? Like, you have the conversation of, you are on track to be fired. We are writing down the 3 bullets that need to happen. We're going to check in a week from now. Like, that kind of, when do you transition from some negative feedback to an official plan?
Yeah, what's your thought on that?
That really depends on the situation and the employee, because I think it can be difficult to measure, but I think one of the things that a lot of businesses forget to keep track of is the financial accountability of the poor performance. And that's actually what I've used in corporate environments to terminate employees who were doing a bad job based on the made up fucking like metrics that we were using. Was, you are costing the company and our clients money by making these mistakes over and over and over again. And this is how much money. That's also, by the way, how I've terminated people for time fraud, which, in case you don't know what that is punching in and going to the bathroom for 2 hours and then coming back and then sitting at your desk for 10 minutes and then going out to your car for another hour and like literally not doing work and stealing the company's money. Time fraud, because you can put a quantifiable metric, and that's sometimes what you need to have to convince HR departments and the bosses that this person is a pile of fucking shit and should be terminated because they're stealing the company's money intentionally and maliciously. Anyway, whole nother rant.
I think the other thing that always comes into those arguments too, and one of my biggest frustrations, is how much time are they? So they may be just wasting a small amount of money because they aren't doing much, but they're wasting the money of me. They're wasting the money of their coworkers who have to go over and help them or fix their mistakes or do this. And so a lot of that math comes into like, what value, like when I start a performance improvement plan on someone, it is usually done when that person has shown no signs of reaching out for help on their own. In my one-on-ones with them, to their coworkers, to anyone else, they have said, everything's going awesome. I love this. This is awesome. But then their performance is to the point where we are losing money or damaging, a deliverable or something like that, or where everyone else in the work area has to then pick up their slack. And if they think everything's going well, and we are spending time, money, effort, and deliverables to make up for their work, that's my trigger for this is now a performance improvement plan. Okay. Like, you need to understand formally, like I have told you in all of our one-on-ones, you are struggling. Then I talk to you in the next one-on-one and you say, I feel like things are going great. And then you say, no, that's not going great. And then you talk to them in the next one-on-one and you're like, how are things going? And they're like, going awesome. And you're like, I don't know how many times I tell you this. That is my trigger for this is a formal process. You need to understand that the end step after this is termination. And that's my trigger for like, this isn't, I'm trying to develop you who is struggling and is now become, you are actively taking money from this company and you're actively hurting the careers of your coworkers. You are now put on formal notice for a performance improvement plan. And that's kind of my line of, which again, takes some math. And
I mean, I feel like it's like the determination in that case is the intentionality of it. And at some point that no longer matters. And that's kind of like, I feel like that's where the line is. Cause like in a lot of cases, depending on the employee, like if it's somebody that just has a shitty fucking attitude and you just need to burn them out, like fine, like that's easy. Like you're a pile of shit. Nobody likes you. You add zero value. You're a terrible teammate. You don't fucking show up to work. Good day. I said good day. But the people that are like trying, I said good day.
Bless you.
Yeah, Gesundheit. But the people that are trying to improve, or at least telling you that they're trying to improve, I think that makes it a little bit more challenging because it's like, here's the things. Okay, so we're going to try this. You're going to try this. You're going to take this extra training. You're going to sit with this employee for an hour and see how they do things to see if you can pick up some tips. And then when you're at that point, I feel like it's a quick process. Like if you're at the point where you're like, okay, I don't like nothing's really improved. Like we've probably had some conversations, like some quick accountability stuff. And then we've started to have some more in-depth conversations about like, hey, it seems like you're really not meeting these expectations. And then it becomes like, but also per our previous conversation or last email, drink. then you said that this was going to improve, that you were going to work on these things, and it still hasn't happened, then it becomes the like documentation process. But you've also told them that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not just like, hey, you're still not doing a good job, that sucks. Pizza party though, like ball pit, am I right? It's like, hey, it's becoming a problem. Like, you're costing the company money. People are having to pick up after you. Everyone else is having to pick up your slack. That's just not a cool situation to be in. And then you're moving into the documentation process, which when I get to that point, there is very little chance of return. Like, if I move into the, like, we're now going into paper documentation, you're signing some shit, you're talking about an improvement plan, there's very little likelihood that there's going to be a return from that, because there very little or very rarely genuinely is. And that's my kind of measurement for, like, if this person is unsavable, we've tried extra training, we've given them extra resources, we've said, hey, come in at 7:30 instead of 7, whatever the thing is, and it's still not making an impact, then at that point I'm like moving into the process. But they've already been told. And I always tell every employee too, I'm like, you will never be surprised if I fire you. You will always know that it's coming. You will know the day that it's coming, probably, depending on the corporate environment and state that you work in. Maybe you get suspended first if you're in Oregon. But anyway, yeah, there's never a surprise. And we've had a lot of conversations ahead of time. And that's really kind of like, for me, it's the point of no return. Because if I feel like they can't be saved, then you got to get them out. And if I feel like they can be saved, then you're still working on stuff. So
yeah, I feel like a lot of times there's some like corporate environments where you, after a certain amount of actions, are like required to put them on a performance improvement plan. And if you don't have a say, that is usually one where you're like, okay, like I have put people on, in past lives, I have put people on performance improvement plans that I'm like, I believe in this person. This person has what it takes. They just need a little extra care. And the performance improvement plan actually gives me the oomph to do what I wanted to try and do from the beginning, which I'm like, you have to give this person this trailer. You have to give the person this job. You have to give the person this extra training. They have to spend the time because they are on a performance improvement plan. And so you can use it as a weapon. A lot of times the performance improvement plan is always seen as this is just the formality so we can fire them so we don't get sued after we fire them. A lot of times that's what the PIP is. But sometimes you can use it as a flipping weapon if you're in a corporate environment.
You can say fuck here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, but I'm using it as a flipping weapon. Right. And so you can use it as a weapon to be like, this person's on a PIP. We have determined that we need to take these steps to make them successful. So you can fuck all the way off, because I'm using my flipping weapon to have you fuck all the way off. And so I think there's a lot of especially misconceptions with how to, like, for managers to use a PIP. Usually the PIP is this scary thing, because normally a lot of places the PIP is like, we've already decided we're firing you.
It's shitty. It's awkward.
It's over. You're done. Yeah. We put you on a PIP.
Usually your boss has said you need to fire Ben, and you're like, fuck, I guess I have to fire Ben. And then you have to put Ben on a PIP because he's a pile of shit table slapper. And then
you had to.
Because, like, again, you have two hands, Ben. Stop using your fucking forehead. And it's not or at least use your hands in addition. I don't care.
Quit touching the pizza first. That's really anyway.
Yeah. So like a lot of times it's determined, it's always like the last resort. But I think there's a lot of value, especially in larger corporations, as using PIP as your ability to swing out, like punch out outside your weight class as a manager, to give a person you believe in resources. In my past life, I have used PIPs to be like, hey, listen, I'm just going to talk to the site manager and we're going to make this happen because this person isn't successful here, but they have been successful and we've had them do this other thing. They're now on a PIP. Yeah, they're now on a PIP. And then I've had my boss be like, no, just fire them. And I'm like, no, they're going to be extremely valuable. They're on a PIP now. that gets approved through the top. And then I'm able to sit down with the site manager and be like, this is what this guy needs to be successful. Or you can spend 60,000, 120,000 to retrain someone. Bringing in a new person is extremely expensive. And he's just like, oh yeah, just move them there and then have them be super successful. But I needed the oomph of just being like, this person is on their last straw. So just let me throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
That makes sense.
I'm just a bully, so I don't ever.
I just like to fire people.
No. I just mean like, because depending on where you're at too, like putting someone on a documented performance management for whether it's just like a documented verbal or a written or a PIP or a PIR or whatever, like that shit goes in their file. And depending on who they end up with, or if let's say you go through the 1 millionth reorg of the year and they move leaders again, then they're stuck with this shit in their file. So if I usually, that's probably the difference for me is that like I wouldn't use that, but I will also like a fucking pit bull on a pork chop. I'm like, I will get this shit done.
So performance improvement plans are part of performance review cycles, which are part of your job as a manager, a big part of your job as a people manager.
That's the only part of your job as a people manager. I mean, it's how you determine if what you need to do.
Fair. I guess it depends on if your role as a people manager is only the people management or if it is deliverables based on the people that have been given to you. But that's a whole different episode.
Yeah, that goes back to it's like managers versus leaders. And like, are you just a person whose job is just to move numbers around on a fucking like whiteboard or spreadsheet? Or are you an actual people leader? And I think a lot of like corporate environments, they're like, we need they treat it's like if you can't get a result, then you're bad at your job. But like in all actuality, it should be fucking leadership. But anyway, I digress.
Like I have a large track record of like mentoring, developing, and creating effective teams. And that's what I do. And my mindset is my job is to make my people good at their job. Because again, I'm not sweating. My job is to make sure that the people that sweat do everything they need to do. And that's like
so many tables.
They sweat so hard slapping those tables. And so those are the big things on that is like my job is just performance management. And it is, I mean, there's like, what does it mean so in a performance management review, why are you not successful right now, Ben? And you say, well, because the tables are all 40 yards apart. Do they need to be 40 yards apart?
Hilarious. Massive bongos.
Yeah. And out of that performance management review, I'm like, what is the OSHA requirement on tables? And they're like 40 inches. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, 40 inches? And they're like, yeah. And then we just move all the tables 40 inches rather than 40 yards apart from each other. Now you're better at your job. And that came from your feedback. That came from how you need to do to be better at your job.
It's a communication channel is a performance review cycle. Maintaining the continuous communication channel. Yeah. So that you know what's going on. Your employees know what's going on.
I think my favorite thing is when we confuse ourselves.
But like, for me, that's the big part. That's the superpower of an effective manager is how well you actually communicate back and forth with your employees.
All right. Is that a wrap on performance review cycle?
Well, I mean, what did we learn then?
Oh man, you're asking me to learn things? I signed up to drink. But
I just wanted to talk about math and beer.
Yeah, right? Performance review cycles are tables. No. Performance review cycles is slapping to the best of your table ability. Yeah, we'll go with that one.
Yeah, exactly right. That is exactly right, Ben.
Premium takeaways.
Yeah.
Humans need purpose, and it's our job to give them purpose.
We didn't even get into like motivations and Tuckman's ladder and theories of hygiene and things like that. That is so many things are just another episode.
Pavlov's bells, all those
so
things.
Many bells.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, everyone, most people want to do a good job. And for some people, they don't know what that means. And so your job as a manager is to tell them what a good job looks like and then give them the tools to do a good job. And that doesn't mean yelling from the sideline, wow, so good. It's actually being there and communicating that on a regular basis with the
Nice.
performance management cycle.
High five. Go team. Tune in next week for.
Yes. For something that we don't even know is
For
going
how to hide a
happen.
body.
No, that can be our Halloween episode. That'll be our Halloween episode.
All right.
Why personality tests are BS.
Yeah, I also wrote down business continuity and financial breakdowns.
I also wrote down financial headwinds. So,
But can you write? Are you writing?
A buzzword.
I'm out of beer.
We didn't drink for headwinds.
I'm out of beer.
Oh.
Guess you have to drink Ben's. So, but are you writing these down on our post-it note? Did you add financial breakdowns and business continuity?
I will.
And Bunnies in the Murder Zone, episode 4 is a wrap.
Oh, I like that.
Everything is
Everything
terrible.
is terrible. Fucking nailed it.